Hello and welcome to the after party. Your hosts are the great Jared George, and I am the other guy. Appearing on the honors roll call today is Naminko, Laura, R. Van Diggle, Mobile Scotty, Ocean Outlaw, Goofy Grape, Try to Improve Your Life, great name, Cliff, the great JP, great friend, Last Paleocon, Charlie, Shaxor, Happy Cat, DBQ Cooper, Going Free, great name, and Michigan Wave. I'd like to thank these wonderful and conscientious heroes for the support they provide my service to White Wellbeing. A hero's salute to you all. As for the Superchat crown winner of last week, the crown goes to Heidi for investing a total of $25. You cannot stop us from protecting our children. Congratulations and congratulations, brave woman. In second place, by just a hair, was Mrs. Jess Horst, investing $24.99. A great many thanks and congratulations to you as well, dear lady. Super Chat on YouTube at roughly 33%, on Entropy at 15%, where you can also watch the stream, ask and vote on questions, and participate in polls that I post, on Ko-fi at 15%, or dig down into the video's description for a familiar alternative at 6%. Jared and I evenly share the Super Chats with all of our guests on this show, the After Party. Now, today we are getting tapped into a well-known individual, Tim Murdock, from the whiterabbit.radio.net. A big thank you to him for his service to White Wellbeing over all of these years. I know this is a good guy because he has treated my good friends like Poseidon, Jared George, Dr. Kevin McDonald, Henrik, and a number of others. He has treated them all well, so this is a good guy. Let's welcome Tim Murdock. And Tim, tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and introduce yourself to our audience, just in case anybody here doesn't know about you and the sterling work you all do over there at White Rabbit.
We are a message-based media company, and we put out most of the memes you have running around Western civilization right now. In general.
Factory. That sums it up right there.
There you go. We get it out there. I am generally in multiple different formats. Historically, mostly podcasts from the beginnings, then animations. Most people know us from animations like Anti-Racist Hitler, especially, is one you can't ever run away from, or How Whites Took Over America, or Johnny Racist, which was kind of, it's a series, which I made a mistake and didn't do a complete episode in the first one. But typically, I'm known through animation. Some know me through very large podcasts like The War on Whites with Lana Lockteff at Radio 314 and Red Ice. And I can't remember how long ago that was. That was a very big podcast. So I'm known for various different things. Actually,
but this is when Henrik and Lana were our guests back in November, Lana said that episode was one of the turning points for her, because I was asking about their arc, which is a little similar to mine, where they started with exploring things that were a little more esoteric, and then gradually that search for truth led to these countercultural, metapolitical, and civilizational kinds of things, just those little things that we concern ourselves with. But Tim, welcome. You are the first TAP guest of the new decade.
Indeed.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for that wonderful introduction. Getting endorsed by Lana is always a good thing. It's good optics. It wears well. It wears well. One of the first models we deployed in trying to help out Whitaker get out his paint peeling memes, if you will, some of them are rather aggressive, is we wanted alternative media. I needed alternative media, not your typical pro-white media channels, which were massive channels at the time, but they weren't really broadcasting messages at the 8th grade level yet, meaning they weren't into memes. That was coming. I went after a particular audience that had sizzled a particular message called, everyone's heard of it, most people don't know the origins, global warming is a hoax. How many of you guys heard that one? That thing brought the whole globalist structure on global warming to their knees, that little meme. But it's been around since the 80s and they couldn't get anything done with it. Then the internet came out and the alt news came out. The alt news crowd would be everything from Alex Jones to the more sensible Red Ice to even your more conspiracy sites. And they started spreading that thing wildly, just that little meme over and over again. And then, of course, Russian hackers busted into that server in the UK and found out they had been cooking the books on global warming, and boom, the globalists had to change their meme. It went from global warming to climate change. Most people don't know the story behind it. I knew the story at the time. I knew what was coming and that they were going to be crippled by a meme. And it can happen. Messages do hurt. Messages dominate the social space of the 20th century. I mean, memes like, what would the 20th century be without the words racist or anti-Semite? It would be a totally different bill of goods. What will the 21st century be with words like anti-white out there? A totally different bill of goods.
And that's what we're going to explore tonight. So again, welcome. That was a nice introduction. And yeah, thank you for having Jason and I on your show on White Rabbit as well. We've been on at different times. So please go check those out as well. We'll have those on the TAP TV site. But yeah, we have a bunch of stuff to get to, Tim. We're excited today, of course. And why don't we start with something just to set the frame that I've heard you say before, which is terminology determines ideology. You've already given us a little bit of a warm-up to that, but anything else you'd like to say to really set the table before we get into some more specifics?
It's just one of the key things that I've learned is the art of subversion, or if you can call it an art, and the art of taking something back. The art of political warfare in general comes from imposing one's terminology on the enemy. Most of our lifetimes was spent watching white men, decent white men, saying, I'm not a racist, but I'm not a racist, but they had terminology imposed on them before anyone watching this had a cultural Marxist, white extinction protocol social system imposed on them. You had terminology imposed on you, words like racist, words like anti-Semite, and everything that goes with it. They imposed terminology, and in one fell swoop, they imposed ideology, and they're continuously using their media assets to try to do this. Once the internet got going, when the internet, I would say you're looking at 2006, 2005. It takes 15 to 20 years to brainwash a nation, because that's how long it takes to put a nation underneath a new media or new textbooks. It also takes 15, 20 years to try to undo that. And you can only undo that with either new textbooks, wiping the slate clean, or brand new media. Well, the internet, if you go back and look at the clock, look at when I first brought out a podcast, because there was no really point in even trying to do anything over the top before you're into those sweet spots. We're now way overdone. I mean, the internet, 2005, 2006. I'm sorry, not even that. You're dealing with. What are you dealing with? You're dealing with the mid to late 90s. You're dealing with AOL, Wide Open World Wide Web. And so you're really dealing with those particular timeframes. You're dealing with something we call the basics. And the basics, if someone's winning, the basics are by and large on their side. If someone's losing, the basics are pretty much against them. Someone's imposed terminology. Someone's written textbooks, and they're into the sweet spot of 15 to 20 years, meaning that it's going to, you're dealing with a mess. I don't have to destroy your civilization after 15, 20 years. You'll do it for me. You're into this type of mess. How do you undo that? And that's a big bite to start taking off. It's a big chunk, but generally the basics have done a lot for us. Things like the internet, having a handful that understand these type of things, that can play the ground game very well, meaning basically repeating things that have the appearance to be working, or that maybe even stir things up over and over again, which in America tends to be legal. In Europe, it can be really dicey.
So Tim, the internet cycle we're in now, I know you were talking a moment ago about some of the predecessors in the 80s and 90s, but the culture that we're in now, that we've all been experiencing for the last several years, when would you say that really began? We were on a few year-end shows recently, and a lot of people were talking about reflecting not only on the year, but on the decade and what's ahead. So where do you think we are in that cycle, but specific to the kind of internet meme culture that we've seen, I guess, really explode in 2015, 2016, around the Brexit time?
Well, that started, all right, 2006, 2007. We were looking at whitakeronline.org /bugs. Well, actually, I don't even know if Bugs was out yet formally. I don't think it was. But what we were doing, we were taking Whitaker's mantra, which basically introduced the modern world to concepts like white genocide or anti-racism as a code word for anti-white. Various different memes are embedded in one 200 word phrase, 200 word little mini essay, if you will. And we were taking that, we were using Yahoo News groups to see if we could be able to post it online and what would happen and various different things like that. So if you look at a time frame of 96, 2000, and 2006, 2007, you're dealing with what are you dealing with? You're dealing with 10 years, right? No, you're dealing with you're dealing with that particular time frame. So then you're building into the 15 years. And the 20 years, which now, of course, we're into overdrive. Of most you're dealing with a generation that is, for a second there, I couldn't count. We're dealing with a generation that, in my opinion, has been raised on stuff so much that they have very short attention spans. They're always moving on to the next subject matter, the next beam. And we're still here baking stuff in, which is kind of funny. So there's always a give and take in this type of thing, but we're in overdrive now, where things are way overdone. From our perspective.
Yeah.
You've spoken a little bit. I've seen you speak about, and I know it's often couched in right and left, and Jason and I have spoken about this. I know sometimes it's an easy catch-all, but like you, we try to think of it more as anti-white and white positive, and we're trying to get some people to think a little bit outside that box of right, left. Again, I know sometimes it's an easy kind of quick shorthand, right? But there's a lot more, there are more layers there. When you talk to the average person, they might understand a little better still, though, as well. The left didn't have to win debates, but they won the culture because they took over the terminology. And you use it as a way to say, we might have won the debates even in the past, even in the 1960s and the 1970s. We might have had the arguments laid out better, but still didn't win the culture war. So there's a huge lesson to be learned from that. Why don't you just share with our community here your perspective on that for a moment?
Well, the first thing you do in war is the first thing you have to realize is that someone's at war with you. So if you don't think you're at war with them, well, it doesn't really matter if they're at war with you. I mean, if China announces that they're at war with the United States, it doesn't matter. Well, I don't want to fight you. It doesn't really work that way in the real world. Unfortunately, this is an unfortunate thing for whites because whites aren't ethnocentric by and large, and they're not conflict-oriented. Those that are ethnocentric and conflict-oriented, unfortunately, end up in jail sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons, and this is a big challenge. So one thing we want to do is redivide the social space. This was the first primary goal, and that is done with terminology. The enemy is going to do things between racist and anti-racist. It's the environment we grew up in. We're only going to think of one division as well, pro-white, anti-white. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if anti-white is bad, and it is considered universal bad, there's not been one newspaper since 2011, and there's many that have mentioned the word. One newscaster even, there's not been one that mentions the word anti-white in a positive light. So we've already won that battle. No one says, I'm anti-white and this is why, and this is a good thing. No, they don't do that. So that means the polar opposite is good and healthy. And that's what you have to do. I mean, it's kind of like going to war with China. Again, use a basic analogy. They've announced war with you and you're sending your guys off to basic training. And you get to white nationalists, they get to basic training. They're like, well, no. I'm not at war with the Chinese. No, we got to be at the war with the Mandarin elite running things. Well, that's true. The Mandarin elite is running things, but that's not really how it's going to work. There's going to be one division in the social space, and you're going to be learning to aim your gun at anything Chinese, unfortunately. And hopefully nothing happens with China. I'm just using a basic analogy. And so that's the first thing we got to get down. All the big brain stuff goes away on the front lines, and it's just pro-white versus anti-white, or those interested in the long-term preservation stability of Western kind, as you guys say, or white well-being, opposed to the anti-white, the anti-whites who are opposed to it. You got to start redefining that social space, which I think is incredibly accurate. I think the average white person sees everything as anti-white on TV because it is. I think they can see the anti-white narrative, the anti-white perspective being enforced because it is.
Why do you think that they have showed their hand and accelerated so much recently?
I think part of it is brainwashing works both ways. And, it's amazing what can set them off. One of the things that surprised me was it's okay to be white. And just something that simple, something that simple, which, I did a live stream with the one of the guys behind it that started on a Discord server, and they couldn't believe that it actually would set off people like it did. The anti-whites, which it means it's not okay to be white, but you got hundreds of millions of white people that think it's just fine.
Yeah.
So we want to move this forward. So I think it's their overreaction. I think it's in some ways it's panic. In some ways it's brainwashing. They're incredibly programmed people. They react like Pavlov's dog. You blow a whistle and they bark, or they respond, and this becomes, this is, a lot of people think that kids spread messages on the internet, these young people, because they're super, white nationalists and stuff like that. It isn't true. They're doing it to get a rise out of the other side. They're doing it because they realize it irritates the powers that be to some extent. They probably don't fully know the extent of it. None of us know exactly the conversations that go on behind the scenes, but there has to be an uproar because they've tried to shut down everything, everywhere, at every time. And they're tracing stuff back to where they lost control. When you lose control, the internet plays a vital role in modern society, and they cannot control the message on the internet without shutting down our side. And they're not even good at shutting everything down. They're only good at shutting down like the top guy or the top two, or going after this guy. You can't shut down phrases at the 8th grade level. It's just impossible. It doesn't work that way. People are going to repeat it. We know this from the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, if you're asking people to do something illegal, like, if you're asking the Soviet Union, you're asking dissidents, okay, we're going to go blow up a building. Like, they're not going to do that. They're going to kill a bunch of innocent people, their comrades and whatnot. If you're telling them we're going to spread pamphlets with all this seditious information about workers' paradise that murders people for leaving, well, that's true. That's kind of a weird truth, but why would a workers' paradise have to kill people for just trying to leave? This is a basic contradictions that these type of systems are built on. Kind of like diversity is only for white people. We're dealing with these same type of basic contradictions, this same type of closed-in reasoning that has to be defended at any and all cost. And what we're doing is using same type of breakout messages, and people will spread it because, come on, you're saying it's white supremacist and illegal and all this type of stuff to just put up a sign saying it's okay to be white. What's the reasoning behind this? Let's talk about it. Well, they can't allow that discussion at all because it's not okay to be white from their perspective.
Yeah, there were certain colleges that put out these frantic letters after those were seen on their campuses, and they had to have these meetings about it with faculty and call in the police, and maybe even FBI are looking into it. I mean, that reaction too, I hope, sets off a lot of normies out there when they see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, typically, yeah. I get emails from time to time of like, well, I saw this animation way back in the day, and I remember the logo, and that's the day I was red pilled and stuff like that, and questions about, how I set out to red pill people. And my answer is I don't. I just try to bring basic awareness to simple concepts like, diversity is an anti-white genocidal scam. That's what the animations are based on. If you're forcing diversity down the throat of one group and only one group, obviously there's, you have some kind of malicious intent. Mm-hmm. You're using it as a weapon.
That's right.
When I've checked your material out, it's interesting to me how you track word usage. And this is, I didn't know when we first spoke how deeply into language you are and actually studying it in the scientific way. So the metrics of word usage and seeing words go in and out of fashion and common usage in the general population, what tools do you use to track that? I was curious.
Well, it can be somewhat, in the modern internet age, it's somewhat, it was simple for a period of time. Now it's become quite difficult because a lot of stuff we want to track is so censored. Mm-hmm. They're not given accurate numbers. At one time, that's funny because that's the same question the enemy always asks me over and over again. Every time they've shown what metrics are you?
If you don't want to reveal your tricks,
I will say this: they used to use when we started using this stuff. We would take search engine results and various different social media metrics and look at how it was growing from month to month or week to week. However, that became totally skewed, so we went to some other tweaked methods. But that is a basic general ideal. Typically, you don't know something's out there until it goes top down. You can't really say, okay, well, it's used in Time Magazine again, and the last time they used it was 1975. That's not good enough. You want it to go top down. You want guys on Fox News using it. You want presidential candidates. These are ideal environments. If you want to hear top down, just listen to the intro of White Rabbit Radio live on White Rabbit Radio TV, and you'll hear top down. But that is the goal of every type of wordsmith.
Meaning you take clips from mainstream media and use it in your intro.
Yeah. They're right from mainstream. Now, most of Fox News, my understanding is, and they're the only ones, interesting enough historically, that have showed up at my doorstep. Fox News was using words like anti-white. I've been told, and I don't want to go into too many details, there's a blackout on a lot of these phrases. There's no more Tucker Carlson talking about white genocide. There's no more they're not saying that word. If they do, it's kind of like a slip up type of thing. So I think that is interesting in itself. One of the things I watch is various different parties using phrases I've used and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden they stop, which is something you guys need to look for. They start using no white guilt, and then all of a sudden one morning they stop abruptly. That also tells you something. We learn to listen to the silence, basically. You want to see something all over the place with no one talking about it, and that's when you know you're going to get knocks at your door.
Yeah, I think I saw a video from Morgoth last year. There are ways, and I don't know if this is quite what you do, but I know he pulled something up where you could see certain word that was not used in the first couple of decades after World War II, and then it begins to grow, and newspaper references. And I've seen Twitter graphs too, like the New York Times usage of this phrase or that phrase, and it's on a graph, and all of a sudden it starts going up as we get more into peak clown world the last few years.
Yeah, sure. I mean, everyone uses the word anti-white now. There's some pro-whites in the various different fields that have used it historically. Whitaker being one of them. I started using it. I know Jason Kuna. Sorry. You really butchered the German name. Mr. No White Guilt used it. I know that in various different places we tracked it back, but the mainstream media didn't use it from the 60s. Since the 60s, the mid 60s, they were using it during the Black Rise or something like that, like the New York Times. But it was in a dictionary as old as I want to say 1910 or something like that. It's back in dictionaries, which is kind of interesting itself. But it's a word that the mainstream media has been using since about 2010, 2011. From time to time. It's in articles, and you can get, most of the major search engines allow you to subscribe to news reports using various different phrases or terminology. And so if that word shows up, they'll send you a news report. They were a lot more accurate than they are now, but still they're pretty accurate as far as basic usage. But you want the stuff to be top down. You want it to be all over the place, obviously. It's pretty easy to do. Our enemy introduces their message. You get a set of talking points, and I go on Fox News. Let me give you one example that I gave at the first conference I spoke at. Ahmadinejad is going to wipe Israel off the map. This is what the neocons were on back in 2011. Everyone's heard this. Ahmadinejad was going to wipe Israel off the map. Typically what people do is start debating whether or not it's true, the nuances of Ahmadinejad's statement. What the neocons are going to do is keep repeating it, and only a half dozen seed at that across the planet. But if you have that type of media access, that type of media support, and that type of free range, you can pretty much kill it on a day-to-day basis even with total lies, actually, which is kind of sad. We've pretty much have always had just the internet and have to use very creative methods to move messages into the mainstream. We don't have any of that to go by, any of that type of stuff. But it's pretty fairly simple to move talking points out into the public if you'll stay on message. The neocons are the most successful group, period, at moving their messages into they are brutal at staying on message. They are brutal at using words. They will cut throats if you're not on their particular message regarding, let's say, Israel or a message regarding a war they want pending or something. They are absolutely brutal. They take this type of stuff very seriously, but anyone playing power politics is going to.
On that note, then, That's perfectly sets up what I wanted to ask as I'm sitting here thinking, and this is just an off the cuff, spontaneous question. Having said that, how was it that Fox News picked up words like anti-white? Is there indication that there are guys there that are our guys, but how does it get to the point where a Tucker Carlson, and we all know Fox News it's still a mainstream media outlet and it still leaves a lot to be desired. But it does seem like kind of a miracle that Tucker Carlson even got to talk about some of the things he talked about on air. Any insight into the mechanics of that?
No. I mean, sound is a vibration. And the more we know about it, the more interesting it becomes. Let me explain it like this. Everyone watching this right now just probably heard some Christmas music. I can guess. I hope everyone heard Christmas music. And a great percentage of you heard Christmas music, if not 100%, that you heard since you were a little child. And some of that Christmas music would have transported you right back into a time when you were in a pew in a church with a grandparent or a loved one. And music and sound can do this type of thing. You can look up articles. In fact, I pulled up one based on the questions I knew Mr. George would be asking. The physics of sound waves and why you feel music. Unlike waves on a lake, sound waves don't travel up and down. They're more like layers of high and low pressure traveling outwards in all directions. Each wave consists of a layer of high pressure followed by layers of low pressure. The bigger the difference between the high and low pressure, bigger the difference between the high pressure and the low pressure, the louder the sound. So pressure is what you feel when you're getting transported. You're feeling the pressure waves, the vibration.
Yeah. If anyone's standing in front of really good speakers,
absolutely
it's loud, you can actually feel the sound vibration.
Absolutely. Now, we assume wrongly that sound stops because, the sound from some catchy jingle or advertisement or Christmas carol, we assume that sound stops at a brick wall or at over some particular type of distance. It's not necessarily true. Sound is vicious and cruel in that way. It just keeps going. So if you're bombarding the social space with pressure waves over and over again, repetitively, and you have certain amounts of access to social media, which we have had up until maybe just recently, and still do, you just might have to have anonymous accounts or just have to keep going at it. You're going to have some type of effect. There's certain amount of effect over time. This damage over time effect that these particular phrases have. Same with the word racist. In 1945, you were to call my ancestors racist, they'd be like, well, all right, whatever. 1985, 95, they're worried about losing their jobs. So there's a big difference, and there's a damage over time effect to using these words in social space, and everyone generally starts conforming. You see this when dominant memes start taking over, and certain personalities, even within dissonant circles, don't like them. They're forced to respond. You want a good example to this. Someone watching this will walk off this show and your wife or husband will come in and they'll say the wrong thing and set you off like a bottle rocket. And you could have a nosebleed IQ, but sound demands a reaction. Demands some type of, it's going to get the emotion out of you. It's going to move you in ways you don't think it's going to, even if you're prepared for it. So I think there's been, people positioning across the spectrum, basically. You're going to have to talk about these issues. We're forcing conversations. And you can't talk about these issues unless you use, our words. Now, you can get around it by just calling us white supremacists, but that's not going to work long term. It's a failed strategy. It's like saying, I'm not anti-white, but that isn't going to work when you're always arguing a position that always puts us in a world without any white people. And you're always putting policies in place to bring that world about. You're going to have a tough time proving this type of thing. The problem that comes down when you subvert societies, you take power over those you have no loyalty to, and eventually there's hell to pay for that.
So I know you're saying we have powerful vibrations out there currently, but you also said a little while ago that the younger generation now have the attention spans of a goldfish. So do you still have concern? Do you still have concern that some of these older terminology will increasingly be hidden from us and taken out of Wikipedia entries? And I was going to say history books, but who really is looking at the physical books anymore? Because
I think everyone's noticing things have sped up. We're coming into an end game. There'll be outliers, and surprises happen in the direction of your dominant message is out there. Surprises will happen to ensure that we survive is what I think. I think Western civilization is going to go on. It's going to thrive and be great. We're going through a particular crisis right now, brought about, and I think, in my own personal opinion, we're in an end game. We've been in it for a while. Different groups are jockeying for position at various different angles of attack and whatnot. And elites have made decisions. Big plans have been laid, and things are going to go forward. And we should be seeing something, I would say, from now until the next, definitely by 36 months from now, we're going to see. I'm talking about saber rattling stuff. For Mr. Global Homo, it's go big or go home. Because there's a revolt happening, and we ain't the only game in town. There's a revolt happening across the whole entire planet.
What are the other games?
What do you mean?
Countering Global Homo.
I don't know. What do you mean by games?
Oh, you said we're not the only game in town.
Oh, okay. Well, let me give you an example. The Iranians just walked in, or being accused of walking in, and they're not backing down from it, of punching the U.S. in the face at the biggest embassy, one of the biggest embassies in the world, our embassy in Iraq. And so you got that going on. You've got all kinds of Israeli, the Israeli tension, the Israeli factor, the Zionist factor. They're more interested in the survival of Israel than they are probably. They're definitely more interested in the survival of Israel than whether or not we survive. Now, there's a good thing to that, and there's a bad thing. So they're basically concentrating their interest on the survival of Israel. We have trade wars with China that are ridiculous, that are causing certain amount of challenges to China, and as well as American businesses and definitely American farmers. We have election cycles. You have a variety of different infighting. And I think that when you talk about Fox News and you talk about why they're using certain words and all of a sudden they stop, we're dealing with infighting. That's the only rational explanation. Mm-hmm. Or you'd keep using them, because Tucker Carlson was gaining enormous amounts of power by using them. Mm-hmm. Right. So we could make several different logical conclusions, but we're not the only game. There's a lot of different problems on the planet. What we're doing is sticking our fingers in their eyes, is using every legal way possible.
So we're in so far, and I've loved this because we haven't quite had a conversation like this with anyone on tap. So I'm loving this. We're in deep with your specialized knowledge, right? But taking a step out of that for a little while, and you just as a person, Tim, as a man of European descent, where do you said you believe Western civilization is going to survive. What do you think this is? Do you have like a bigger view of what the hell this is that we've been born into, even a spiritual view? Is it something that it's almost like a body has to go through fighting off disease and it's going to make us stronger in the long run, that kind of thing? We hear about evolutionary bottleneck. Like, how does this hit you personally, and what is your bigger,
I think it's an enormous test. It's an enormous test. You're facing a very peculiar enemy, which our race is used to standing up, grabbing a sword and grabbing a gun and fighting and doing extremely well against any enemy. And now you're against an enemy that wages war by deception. Yeah. And that may not be, when you're, one of the things I learned as an activist, if you want to be effective, you better look at the world look at the universe with a great deal of humility. And that starts with, there's going to be something you probably don't know. There's going to be surprises. But when you act, you have to act with total arrogance. Then you have to step back and look at the universe with a great deal of humility. And a lot of these guys can't balance that. I've always tried to balance that, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so much. But assume there's things about this enemy you don't know. Don't assume you know everything. And here's another thing too. This is natural law that I've learned the hard way. If you have 1 million sheeple behind you, you're going to have someone way ahead of you. There's going to be some smart white people ahead of you. This is the reality of the situation. And in hindsight, vision's always 20/20, and it lends itself to the truth. But, all we have to do is keep laying the foundation. And the only thing I've ever tried to do is try to affect those who may go on to affect those. Try to have some type of geometric progression, which has always worked for me. Really the only thing you can hope to do. I don't know where Western civilization will survive and thrive. Everyone historically, when you look at white nationalists, you got a homeland here, a homeland there, homeland there. I know that whites you're going to have ethnic states, then you're going to have multiple different ethnic states probably competing against each other for whatever reason. Our job is to get through the gauntlet. against this particular enemy, and to play the game in front of us. The game in front of us, of course, is a legal game. It's a game of words, unfortunately. It's a game that our side historically hasn't been good at, but now we kind of dominate at it online.
Because we value truth. And that's why we built our successful societies, but now it's being exploited against us.
Definitely.
Very wise words. I love what you said about hubris and humility. We talk about that a lot here. Finding
don't assume that there's surprises. Always assume there's a surprise with your enemy, and always assume there's going to be a surprise on your side. The only thing you can do is, like, what do they say? What do the good Christians say? You do the work in front of you. Do the work in front of you, and try to treat people how you'd want to be treated. Get back to some decency.
Very wise words, Jason. We're about halfway to the hour mark so far, and after we get to the hour mark, Tim, we do all the super chats. But do we have any that have built up now, or anything going on out there in the chat? While we'll take a halftime break for a minute.
Lord, was this Wolf Shield, $10? Thank you so much. Do you think Tucker will run for president? And what are the chances he can win? Now, just hold that in your minds for a moment, because we have a couple of others. We have SSII super chatting $14.88. Thank you, good friend. Writing Stir the Pot. And then we have a Farm Master Flex super chatting $2. Thank you so much for that. It's okay to be white. It's not okay to be anti-white. Amen to that. And then back again, our good friend SSII super chatting $14.88. And this time, thank you so much for those kind contributions to White Wellbeing. This time writing, more is said in silence than the blah blah of MSM. Omissions exposes them. Very well written, and thank you again for that. And so back to, let's do this. We have one over here on entropy, which I know I've had a couple of folks write in saying they were having trouble with entropy, and on PWR, we were also having trouble with entropy. So please just keep trying. We do have some who have gotten over here successfully, and on my end, it appears to be working today. We have Oshin Outlaw super chatting $25. Thank you very much for that kind contribution and saying a lot with those words to the anti-whites. Back to Lord Wolfshield. Thank you so much for those $10 investment in White Wellbeing. Super chatting, as I say, with these words, a question that we will throw right over to our honorable guest, and we appreciate him being here today. This is the kind of language that Jared and I like to discuss, certainly our area of focus. And the question again is, do you think Tucker will run for president, and what are the chances he can win?
I have no idea. Honest, he could win. Tucker could win. He has the bill. Here's the challenge with Tucker. I don't know whether he's firmly in our camp or whether he's diabolical, because we've got whole sections of our elite that have to be blackmailed to a certain extent, maybe even a president. I mean, that's kind of we've got to admit that whole sections, and Tucker is establishment. There's no way around that. The fact that he would use certain words and phrases. I know that one of the topics I cover and I'm interested in propaganda terms is UFOs. I don't have any books on UFOs, but I do have all the major events and the propaganda surrounding them, meaning that there was a UFO event here and the propaganda that came out outside of it. And he's been big on that particular meme, but the people he has on Fox News are the same people Hillary had around her, which I think was kind of fascinating. And that's just a fact. They're former CIA guys, and there's been a whole controversy in the alt news with the UFO and the CIA guys that have been around Tucker and Hillary, and most haven't mentioned Tucker though. But that's a side note. But that kind of he's establishment, so you never know. Now, I'm not saying that all members of the establishment aren't on our side. You just there's got to be a give and take here. There's got to be a comeuppance. I haven't seen anyone cross the Rubicon and say quite what Tucker said in a long, long time. and still keep his job. I do know, I've heard that there is a total silence that Fox News can't have on anyone from our side. Because my question for Tucker is, eventually, if you're discussing this stuff, you could have on any variety of different characters, because he always has on the anti-white.
Right.
He's covering, white genocide. He's covering the professor who tweeted out, all I want for Christmas is white genocide, right? So he has on the professor. He always has on the anti-white. He'll have on the Black Panther Party guy. He'll do this consistently. Why not invite on Jarrett Taylor for the opposing view? Well, we're going to have on a white identitarian or whatever he wants to call him. There's lots of guys out there that are very presentable that he could have on that are very well known that he has to know about. He has to know about them. And he could have them on to talk the counterpoint. And he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that at all. And I've heard that there is a reason for that he's not allowed to. That's what I've heard, but I don't know.
Because we don't know if how much of it is him and how much of it is
we don't know.
Power structure at Fox News.
Yeah, we don't know. Ultimately, if you want to keep your job like that, you're going to do what you're told.
And I just want to point out, because this is, I like to celebrate folks in the community. She doesn't want to be mentioned, but she is listening now. And that is a woman who was very observant. She's going free. She's serving White Wellbeing, and she's been very observant of the acquisitions of Disney over Fox Holdings. And I think the last she told me is that Fox News itself is the only thing left that Disney doesn't own in toto.
Wow.
And they have nonetheless an influence in Fox News itself. And so just look at Disney, who runs Disney, and what's behind that group of folks. So I want to send a thank you to her for the messages that she has been sending me now for, I guess, over a year about the acquisitions by Disney.
Yeah, thank you for adding that, certainly. Tim, anything else you wanted to say on that, or shall we continue?
You can continue. Yeah, I mean, the world will debate Tucker Carlson until he, I don't know you're pro-white until you tell me you are.
Right.
Your actions can speak louder than words. I mean, he seems like he's normal. He's a WASP, no doubt about it. He has a decent, he has a fairly, few white kids. He seems like a normal guy, but he is establishment. So that there's some weight that comes with that, what he's allowed to say or do, even if he was on our side, we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, all I've heard,
it's kind of like Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter said some scathing things I can't disagree with at all. She's done all kinds of interesting stuff, but at the same time, she, flips back and forth and has to play these particular games. One morning we might find out why, and it may be for reasons we all know, and it may be for reasons that surprise us.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I try to remind people that all this behind the scenes stuff, corporations, news, media, we know the way that it heavily drifts, but obviously there's still, as you said, and military too, government, there are factions warring with each other behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
It can't be as monolithic as it is, or we'd be.
Here's the thing: our side,
trouble.
This is the problem for dissidents. Dissidents, and this is on the left, dissidents on the right. They're always looking for some mainstream figure to give them acceptance. I'm not looking for that. I don't look for that at all. Give me control of a nation's dank memes, and I don't care who makes its laws, because we're going to be making them soon.
Right.
That's the way that works.
Yep.
It's the way it worked for the enemy. That's the way it works for us. So,
memes.
if you give me something hot, I can show you how to put it out across the planet. We can get it across the planet. It can be there, and it can be there relatively a lot faster than even I thought, like with the It's Okay to Be White and stuff like that. And they're going to have to talk about it. So forget about, appealing to this group of elites or worrying about that. They'll be attracted to you very quickly if you can demonstrate message control for good and bad reasons. You're going to have some good kind and you're going to have some bad kind. It's kind of like, let the war separate them out, because we're coming into a particular crunch time, I feel. And this has been a long time coming. I think it's came in waves, and it's now coming into I heard Jason talk about Event Horizon, and I think that's accurate. It's an outlier. And it's got a lot of different parties jockeying for positions, a lot of people scared. I'm pro-white. I keep things country simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way I put it is there's been a post-war milieu since the end of World War II, and it's only gotten challenged in the mainstream recently. We saw the cracks begin in the dam this last decade. And the decade we're going into is when it's all going to change. There's going to be a tipping point, an event horizon, like you said. Going on what you were just mentioning, I know you've said some of them already, but just to give you a chance to air it out. Right now, as we're sitting here in the opening of 2020, what do you think are the strongest, hottest terms and memes right now?
I think, the most difficult stuff I've ever worked with was the WG memes. I don't know if I can say it on YouTube or not. I used to have a podcast called This Week in White Genocide, and that's what I'm referring to. It is still the RSS feed, I think. But that criminal accusation, I think, is probably still the one that causes the most turbulence in the social space. I think there's some elites that are scared to death of it. I think that anytime you go on, there are things like it's okay to be white. That's funny. That set off a riot. And then there's things they're in a totally another sphere. White genocide has historically been one of those things because it's a crime. Genocide is a crime. Let's put it to you like this. Yeah. What's in the social space? If baby Jesus, Odin, Zeus, pick your deities. I know we've got a lot of different Christians and non-Christian viewers right now. Yeah. Pick your deity of choice. They're all hovering over Western civilization and their mothership. What laws could be applied to immediately decimate the top of Western civilization? Well, the ICC, the Convention on Genocide, ethnic cleansing, this type of thing. When you see things in Germany, most of our side still doesn't get this, but when you see events in Germany, and this is done by the enemy because they're overzealous, it's done because it's social engineers are too programmed. But when you see any type of forced integration, really under the law, what you're looking at is someone it's no different than Saddam Hussein gassing the Kurds, really, under the law. And that's very hard for our side to get. Under the law doesn't treat it any differently. So I think the criminal accusations are going to come more into focus, and it's going to be a cause of probably a great more infighting within like white nationalists and the greater alt-right circles, because you got non-criminal accusations. Always, I've used them for years. They're very easy to work with, like replacement, displacement, and that's these type of things. And then you've got the criminal accusation that just sits there, and it's mostly very similar to the word anti-white. The word anti-white is anti-fragile. The best memes, the best words are going to be anti-fragile. It doesn't matter what you do to it. It just sits there looking at you.
All right.
Sits in the social space waiting for the morning, But the laws that are out there are absolutely brutal. I always talk about, Bob Whitaker, the one that introduced me to pretty much all this stuff. One of the things I learned from him, and I think in hindsight was interesting, he was only ever working on 2 criminal accusations, one treason. And the accusation of treason, if you put someone in it wouldn't be a trial, it would be a tribunal. You don't go to trial for treason in America, you go to tribunals. Treason is a big deal. You can die for treason very quickly in America. Genocide is another thing that is in our lifetimes. If we've seen someone get hit with the bill of goods under the convention, whether it be an ethnic cleansing, like in and it may just be a total lie. Like, let's talk about Slobodan Milosevic, who they caught him on. And many people say that the accusations against Milosevic were a lie, that they were cooked up and everything else. But nonetheless, they memed it into existence. The next thing you know, he gets hauled into a court and he ends up, even though he got off on many instances, he ended up dead in a jail cell. Or you talk about Saddam Hussein or any of the other instances in our lifetime where these type of things come down the pipeline. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. But Saddam Hussein gassed the Kurds, and you heard that in mainstream news. Saddam Hussein gassed the Kurds. We hear things like that, but you're like, well, you don't understand. It's a criminal accusation. You don't know where that's going to go one morning. And it's fine for Saddam Hussein because he's a dictator. He's running his country. He's got absolute power. But one day, one morning, 1 second, it did matter.
Right. Jason, you seem like you were about to say something.
Well, I just saw here a wonderful comment by the leftover, wonderful sister of ours in service to white well-being, writing, "We are becoming mainstream, brother. I look at normie vids on YT and see dozens and dozens of white well-being comments. We are rising." What an inspirational thing to share. Thank you for that testimony.
And it's true.
Yeah.
You can objectively see stuff. The interesting thing about using the words anti-white, I always say, if people are really, let's say you're not good at defending yourself, and you're going to have to start if you can just do one thing and learn to defend yourself against words like racist. And now it's easier than ever. You can just say it's an anti-white slur. And you can use little sleights of hand at the dinner table to move the conversation. And this is interesting. You can do this objectively. You can say, if someone's saying something anti-white, you don't want to stir the pot. You can say, well, from the anti-white perspective, you're speaking from the anti-white perspective. Or you can say, you're speaking from the anti-white point of view. You're calling them anti-white, but you're doing it in a very polite way.
Yes.
You start doing this over a period of time. It used to take maybe 90 days to influence, let's say, your work environment or your. And when I say influencing it, you'll know you're influencing it when the other people start repeating things.
Yeah.
And they'll do this without even noticing it. But you can do that really quickly right now, and that's because of pressure waves. That's because of the social space, the closed nature of the system we're in, where it can't be refuted and it can't be fought. Your inevitable future is death to all whiteys and everything else, all the over top of the stuff they're always presenting with our inevitable future. But it creates a really a closed-in system, almost like a big glass bubble of Western civilization. So you're just basically just pumping it. With words and phrases that give us power in the social space, and it makes a difference. And you can actually see this. You don't have to listen to me. You can try. It's very easy. A 5-year-old can do it, and you can try. You can pick up No White Guilt's book and use his phrases in various different scenarios as a self-help tutorial. But you can keep it country simple. Just say, I don't believe that. Well, just try it. Just start calling things anti-white and watch how others start calling it.
Yeah.
That's how the 20th century happened with the word racist. Someone just start calling everything racist we do, and then everyone else start calling it. Then no one start questioning it. Next thing you know, it's infinite power.
Yep. No, precisely. We have so many testimonials now of folks who, and this is how it's been since long before I was on the internet, and trying to convince people to use these sort of vocabulary. They would finally say, okay. And it's a bizarre thing, because it seems like it's motivated by almost like a desire to keep losing. They're comfortable with losing the debate. They're comfortable with walking away as the loser, with feeling immoral. And so they don't want to try something new, especially something that might work. But then they come back and they're like, oh my God, it worked. The number of times, and now thank God with being on the internet, when folks come back and they say, oh my God, it worked, and they're in the live chat, everybody else can see that, oh my God, it worked. And then they go out to their friends and family.
Peer pressure. It's good.
Yeah, and they use it. And yeah, just the look on folks' faces. And this is the exact kind of things that we teach. When you say, even if it's just, and we were just talking yesterday about, on that very brief Welcome to 2020 Going Free that I did, where I answered some of the questions that folks wanted me to answer on PWR that I didn't get a chance to answer. That when you're on a new date, you can say with the person, with kind of testing and feeling them out where they are, you can say that something is, wow, that's really an anti-white commercial. See how that lands on the person that's with you. If it's somebody who's really anti-white, she or he is going to want to endorse the fact that it's anti-white, and that you can get away from them as quickly as possible at that point. Anybody else, then that's where you're beginning the education for them. That's where you're helping them to go free. Only the real anti-whites are really going to bristle at that when you say, well, this is a really anti-white thing, and then just kind of move away.
Yeah, whites have a capacity for objective truth. So even if they want to refuse it, deep down on the inside, they know you're right. They'll keep coming back to it. It'll gnaw at them.
I'm thinking we should at some point have an interdisciplinary stream where you're on, and also Laura Lee Scaife. I don't know if you're aware of her. She's been on our show a couple of times, but she does this very in-depth work on the symbols of Lord of the Rings, the movies, and how
I've heard you guys talk about that. Yes.
For our time, I might have mentioned when I was on your show, but particularly she's about to do a part in her series, because she's not done with the series, and we're gonna have her back on when the new installment comes out.
Yep.
On light, sound, vibration, things that are subconscious in the sounds of words, awakening something in the subconscious and ancestral memory. Her kind of mythic Jungian view of it, and your studies of it in the social space. I'd love to hear what you two have to say to each other. Well, I think we need to do some fun crossover shows like that at some point too.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, Tim, quickly. You said something about people at work starting to repeat your words. How do you, even knowing all this, how do you protect yourself and stay strong mentally so that bad mojo doesn't get into your head? And why do you have any thoughts on why some people are more prone to being led around than others, and some people seem to have a little more mental fortitude and think for themselves?
You know, I don't know what it is. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what the secret ingredient is that makes some people stand up, some whites stand up for themselves and others don't. I don't know. You know, I think everything probably happens for a reason, even if we don't understand it. I just don't know. I don't know. Some people you would think they just continuously back down. Others stand up, and every once in a while you're surprised. You can always be surprised. But the more things that get used, the more they get used. It's just the way it is.
Well, I asked you two questions there. What about what you do to keep yourself strong mentally?
Well, I think generally you want to some type of physical fitness, or try to. Community is a big thing. Surround yourself with people that you can count on, I guess, or try to. I just do basic, simple things. Simple, everyday, normal task. Try to have a normal routine. Don't do. I don't have. There's one thing, like Mr. Richard Spencer. He has a in the social space. He gets attacked at the gym and stuff like that. I'm not in that category, at least as of January 2nd, 2020. So I don't really know what that's like. I am in the category where the news reporter is camped out at a local business and they come running down the street while I'm raking my leaves and stuff like that. But I'm not like in that particular camp. So, it's just a matter of staying as normal as possible. That's our ideology. I'm asked what my ideology is. It's pro-white, and that means I'm white and normal. Basic routines. What I do is I stay to the same routine that I've done for, years. That pretty much is, and I'm surrounded by the same people basically. And we have an ever expanding community, which it also helps.
You mentioned something, and maybe this is what will be the last formal question before we go to some super chats and see what else comes up. You mentioned this earlier, but it's something we wanted to hit. And it's particularly, why was the internet so good for, or maybe we were good for it? Why are white positive dissident right types doing so well on the internet?
I think you're seeing really just a fraction of how well we can do on the internet, really. And the reason I say that is because a lot of growth is cut off and everything else. I think the people are starving for different opinions. So if a different opinion, maybe even that they disagree with politically, is authentic, they're still going to weigh it. I mean, whites have a capacity for objective truth. They're constantly weighing what is true here. And so I think that, meeting the over-the-top phony nature of the controlled media, I think you have a lot of genuine content creators online across the world that are doing way better than their mainstream counterparts. And I think we're just along the same bill of goods. I think you have a starving populace for this type of thing. They want answers. And although, I never try to provide, there's a lot of answers. I want answers to certain questions too, but we can ask the questions out loud and we can work it together, and we can, I go over news and views. I think I do generally 6 30-minute segments Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They're 30-minute segments talking about news and views, and I could go off on any tangent, whatever. Behind a paywall, and I've done it since about 2012, 2013. And that has always done well. People have always had demands on my take on the news because I don't look at things in any traditional view. I have like a view from 10,000 feet, and I take a very broad, longer perspective that we're in long-term trends. The interesting thing about the times we live in is most of these trends are converging over top of each other. And I think that's what we see. And if you're in the white positive sphere, as you guys say, you're really in the bullseye. You're in the center of the convergence. We're talking about topics that everyone refuses to talk about or are afraid to talk about. And, that becomes a point of interest.
And there's an excitement there. As much as it's taboo, there is a benefit to being taboo.
No, sure.
And I think we're going to see that wave crest now. So, Jason, what's going on out there in Chatland?
Well, I was just thinking about it. You're saying that's a benefit of being a taboo. That's absolutely what it is. We have left over clarifying as well where she is seeing these comments being made from the White Wellbeing sphere, and she's saying she's seeing them on PewDiePie. Was this Looper, Marvel, and MSM videos? We are seriously rising. So that is fantastic to hear that from you. What a great testimony. We have Bird's Eye View with a question to clarify. Is not a super chat, but it is a question directly for Tim. Is Tim talking about a specific thing or instance that Tucker has said, or just Tucker's show in general?
Oh, I'm talking about him using words like anti-white, or him using words like white genocide. Him covering various different topics. I mean, one topic that used to be something that you could only find in the online white positive sphere, as Jason so rightly calls it, on sites like Amren or even Stormfront back in the day, was black on white crime stats, and that is now mainstream. That is talked about everywhere, and everywhere has to cover it. Typically, let's go back in time and let's look at our enemy's word racist. Once that starts breaking, you can call someone racist and just paralyze it. Well, then all your other stuff is going to start breaking through as well. It's not a winner take all type thing. It's like, the left wins across the board. Our enemy, any team anti-white, wins across the board. All you have to do is impose that terminology. And I think that's what you're seeing on our side. You're seeing terminology has been imposed. Ideology is crossing boundaries. Different thinkers on our side that maybe we aren't even aware of yet, that haven't even come up yet, are going to be huge, that have been influenced by this stuff in the cradle. Someone 13, 14 years old, maybe got going free for Christmas. What a Christmas present for a 14 or 15-year-old. And they're going to be a giant. Yes. And that's how this is going to go. We can only hope to lay groundwork. It's continuously laying groundwork. And at the same time, assume that there's someone way ahead of you. Don't assume you know everything about an enemy. Assume there's going to be surprises. Expect them, and just keep doing the work in front of you day by day. It's not the big things. The big things, our side focuses on, torchlight parades and big events and big speeches. It's all the little things that lead up to that.
Can I say a quick thing to that, or a quick bonus question then? And I think people out there need to hear this, whether it's now or in replay. You have made a formal study of this. You go deep on this. You have resources to look at trends, both on a minute level and then pull out to a bird's eye view level. So you see how things are tracking. For a number of reasons, I was speaking recently about how there's this kind of fear porn, violence porn posting where sometimes your Twitter feed is just full of negative stuff, and we all do it. Sometimes you need to share it. I mean, all three of us here have shared crazy stuff going on. I saw you posted something that was chilling to me about a journalist. I think she was somewhere in Europe. This woman thought she was going to be an intrepid reporter, went up to a group of men who were, let's just say, not from Western civilization, and they have a particular practice in their civilization where they pull a woman into their circle, and the outside periphery of the circle all dance around and chant and make noise, and they don't know that they're raping her in the middle of that circle. People need to know about that stuff. It's horrifying, and they need to know. It's going to wake them up. Having said that, though, I think that you are in a unique position, and this is why I'm asking you this, to counterbalance, because someone, especially a young person new to this, that's all they see. And, well, not only that, but all of the media, all the anti-white media, all the headlines about how the news is being reported, that this story is being buried, or this professor is going on with their anti-white weekend. It seems like it's grim, and it is grim, but there's a lot of hope.
Oh, you should have been around. You should have been around 15 years ago when I was walking 10 miles to school in 10 inches of anti-white snow. It always seems
give some rays of hope to the younger generations. And
there was a time,
is it really as bad as they think it is?
When I first found American Renaissance, when I first started getting onto the World Wide Web and all these websites were coming out, you think you're the only one that notices something, and then all of a sudden you get on American Renaissance, they're reporting the news. They're like, wait a minute, other people know this too. I'm not going crazy. Now it's all over the place, and it does have a black pilling effect. I think there are some elements of our enemy that wants to seem like all hope is lost and has a black pilling effect. The massive crimes, the massive amount of anti-white crime on any given day. I think it's always been there. I just think there's way more awareness now, way more awareness. And of course, it gets more prevalent the more anti-white you bring in. Most of the planet isn't anti-white. The Koreans, I'll use as an example, the Koreans aren't anti-white. They don't have time for that. Africans running around Africa, the vast majority of them have no interest in the West. They're not anti-white. Most of the anti-whites are in the West or have just been recently imported. And then they go to the brainwashing institutions that only further the process along, our elite institutions that brainwash them. Sarah Jeong, this young Korean girl that was brainwashed in an Ivy League school, and she's virulently anti-white, and it's reinforced because she's making money. She could just be a paycheck anti-white. She might even have a white boyfriend. A lot of them do. AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, has a white boyfriend. And she is anti-white, but there's all kinds of hangups with these people that they're brought in. They go to our institutions. They realize that the meal ticket is being anti-white, and then they just cater to it instantly, or they're virulently anti-white. But that isn't the planet. That isn't the planet. That isn't it's our reality in Western civilization. Is you have a whole layer of this separating us from our elites. You have the white anti-whites, and then all the other anti-whites separating us from the elites. And then you have the gatekeepers on the right and all that kind of stuff. But there are strategies to get around that. And one of the best ways to do it, again, it's a Soviet-like system. It's very Soviet-like, where they own the truth. If you go against it, you go to the gulag. And the way they got around the Soviet Union, the way they laid the foundation was samizdat. It was anonymous pamphlets where they just started rifling little messages over and over again. It was like their edition of the internet. And those models work. They work again. That's why we couldn't have, it's like I said at the first conference, we could not have this conversation if it wasn't time to have this conversation. The ideal that someone like me could use a basic model to use a site like Stormfront to target an audience, not even logged in there, surfing there from alt news, to put words like, anti-racism as a code word for anti-white, to fuse that all over the place. The ideal that could be done says you're ready for prime time. It's just the way it is. But you're going to have to understand what power is. Power is making people say what you want them to say, making people use the words you want them to use. And if the enemy we don't really have a choice. If the enemy's imposed their terminology, their ideology, we have to walk in using the same mechanisms, the same things, albeit in a more honest way, and do the same thing. We don't have a choice. You're stuck eternally. And now, of course, we've done that, and they're kind of stuck, I think, trying to get their deal together. What are they going to do? How big are they going to go? Are they going to throw some crazy Hail Mary pass? They do nothing but churn out apocalyptic memes every day and UFO propaganda. That's mainstream. I'm covering something tomorrow, which I think is fascinating. One of the mainstream rags did a study about how UFOs became mainstream last year. Well, anyone had to cover that. Why? I'm always interested in why information is being produced, but they might have the technology to go big. Our job is basically to survive it and keep laying the groundwork. Stop worrying about the big stuff. The big stuff will fall into place. We just have to survive what they're getting ready to throw at us.
Precisely. We actually have a question over here on entropy, and we have a few super chats as well to get through before we wrap.
I love entropy. Thank God for those people at Entropy.
Yeah, we love them too. They're a great group. Beer Hall Pooch over here on the question widget.
Oh, we like Beer Hall Pooch. I know who that is.
He's a great guy. He writes, Tim, I adore your work. Have you a handbook, check sheet, or helping folk make good samizdat material? So you were just mentioning that. Do you have anything that could help Beer Hall Push to make such material?
Look at what has worked. Look at where the trends are now, and then start testing stuff. What they did with It's Okay to Be White is they brought it out and they started testing it. You're going to know if something's crazy or not. Crazy mean it just lights up the social space. If you've got white nationalists and anti-whites, everyone just pissed off at the same time, you probably got something, But yeah, that the basic standard is it working? Is it out there? Is it making something happen? But when I say that, what do you want it to do? What do you want it to do? What do you want, a red pill normies? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to sell a book that's going to go on and influence and build a community around something? What is it you're trying to do? And try to focus on that. Success leaves clues. Follow the clues. Like I said earlier with, global warming is a hoax. They targeted an alt news crowd that was ripe for a message. I targeted an alt news crowd too and went after. I advertised on Rents. I went after Coast to Coast AM. Lana Lockteff had me on Red Ice. Red Ice was the most open-minded, in my opinion, they're the creme de la creme. They are the first class because Henrik's ability to produce media, and you got to go after the people that you think can that are going to be receptive, and it's a win-win situation. People always want to they always want to get involved in things. They always want to think. White people generally like things that think in terms of something bigger than themselves, but have a plan and go after people that you think can help you as well. You're not alone. You're not alone by any means. Listening to these guys, you should know that there's a whole entire community. You're not alone. So if you have some particular ideals, run it by someone that may know something. They might be able to, point you in a particular direction. But I don't really have a checklist. If something works, it works.
Very well said. And also, of course, everyone right now, Go Free, the digital version, the Kindle version is available. The first 299 downloads for $2.99.
That's a bargain. That's a bargain.
That is the second edition. It is 100 pages deeper, which it's chock full of meme curatives, MC. You will be able to empower yourself, and you will be able to take those out and make those into leaflets, take those slogans. And of course, just by the way, very quickly, folks, I have a pile here of leaflets and more piles that John, we want to thank John again. I hope he's listening now. His own dollars printed up all these magnificent leaflets on his own dollar, shipped to me, and I will on my dollar ship them to you if you want to pass them out, distribute them in your communities, of course, in all legal areas. We have JT Smith, the great JT, over here, £5. Thank you, dear friend. And writing big love to my brilliant chat sisters and brothers. And please, Jason, much love back in return to you, JT. Thank you for being with us as always. You're a great member of this community, great participant. Mrs. Jess Horse coming in again. No verbiage, but another $24.99, exactly what she checked in last Thursday, I guess it was, with on or what day did we do TAP last week, Jared? And thank you again, Mrs. Horse, $24.99. We have Steve Bin Bob. Great to see you again, friend. Super chatting £2 and writing massive white pill from Tim tonight. It absolutely was. And you were able to take it orally the best way. Orthodox Zoomer. Thank you so much for your $2. Writing, God bless, new year, new decade. Keep going forward. That's exactly what we're doing. All things are conspiring for our success, ladies and gentlemen. Bird's Eye View over here with $5 super chat. Thank you so much. And a question for the panel. Will Trump, McConnell, and the Senate stacking the courts help or hurt us? Has anyone looked at their demographics? Do the GOP have a based plan or...
Yeah, their base plan is probably throwing us in jail first chance they get, so they don't have any competition. Don't ever expect any of these guys to help you. All you can do is keep pushing the situation like we push the situation. I don't look for anything from the controlled opposition other than, they'll get rid of us as fast as the left or anyone else. What we do is make their lives miserable because they have to talk about things they don't want to talk about. They want to nod their head in agreement with the anti-whites and that type of thing. It's a giant scam. I mean, what's the two-party system is problematic, and at the same time, various things could happen that could radically transform the social space. As the social space keeps transforming, things are going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I see that as a giant Washington as a giant cluster bomb that we basically, the best thing for us is massive infighting, cage matches. Cage matches among the various different roadblock, whether it be anti-whites or someone that's a paycheck anti-white running interference for them. They're all a big problem because none of them allow any of our people to speak for our people. and you have all these whites have no representation and no one speaking for them.
Well, precisely. We have here also a super chat over on Entropy from the great Edgar Allan Poe, a gentleman, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, who had some very touching testimony about coming to Go Free and how going free is making enormously positive changes in his life, and super chatted a very significant sum many months ago to demonstrate for everyone watching exactly how much good it was doing for him. And he writes here today with $10. Thank you so much for being here, dear friend. I've noticed people will talk about anti-white media, but avoid mentioning the anti-white portions as if they are just starting to notice. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's going to happen more and more. Just keep repeating it. And maybe even at the workplace or whatnot. And this is tragic, but true. You can always give a recent example. You know, there was a particular ad. What country had the ad? I just saw it on Twitter. It was a country where I want to say it's Australia, where you had a young white woman, of course, sitting next to, it was at some type of big event, and she wanted to give someone a kiss, and the white guy was wanting to kiss, but she turned and kissed the black guy.
Oh,
you know, this is like, you know, this stuff is like overdone. They need to cut it back because it makes my job way too easy when they do crazy stuff like this. But, you know, the stuff is, everyone knows the numbers. Only 15 to 20% of Western civilization, of the Western kind, as Jason says, white people, are interested in living in New York, living in Los Angeles, and anything goes. It's only 15 to 20%. It's not a majority. You got 80% sitting there going, what's going on here? You know, what is this? And so the best thing you can do is give it a name, and give it a name that connotates a negative. An anti-white does.
Precisely. Very well stated. We have here a super chat from Lutz0, $9.99. Good live stream today, fellas. I wanted to ask if you have hardback copies of Go Free. I do indeed. This is available in the second edition is available hardback at Amazon. You can also reach out to me at nowhiteguiltcollectibles.com if you would like to get a signed version. So it is available in hardback as well, but it is at the very low price on the Kindle right now. And remember, the Kindle, as I understand, and perhaps Tim knows about this, it can be updated without having to repurchase the book. So as I add information and we come out with second iterations or third iterations, etc., of the second edition, you'll be able to update the book on your Kindle and have that available for you whenever you need to reference the material.
Yeah, I see someone is asking if I have a book out. I have never written a book. I've only written one article or a couple articles in the last decade, and they're on libertarianism, about how libertarians believe in magic. I'm going to talk about that on Saturday, actually, and go over some stuff, because there's been a lot of attention on libertarians. But I was asked if in the private chat, I see Mr. George has asked, or whoever asked this.
It was from HB 2014, who's one of our
okay. Tim, have a written work pamphlet similar to Go Free? No, but I'm contemplating writing a one. I probably will write a book eventually, but I'm contemplating one in the short to intermediate term called "Overcoming Institutional Anti-Whiteness: A Guide for Whites and Their Allies." It's going to be part humor and part serious, because some of the stuff they do is so silly. It's funny, and tragic at the same time. But institutional, when you start talking about Republicans and Democrats in Washington and corporations, you're talking about institutional anti-whiteness, the college campuses. That is our huge problem, is the culture. A survival manual, if you will.
Yeah. And by the way, it was HB 2014 who asked that, who's made clips of all of us here. And
he's hats off to that fellow. It's not easy doing video stuff. It's very time consuming. It's very tedious. Doing clips and spreading it on Twitter and various different venues of things that he likes and thinks others might like, or may affect them, or may find useful. It's fantastic to have people out there spreading this stuff. Yeah. Hats off to that young guy.
We have indeed HB. Can't say enough about him. And if you do not follow HB on Twitter, do so right now, and be sure to always retweet the tweets that he takes the time to produce. He's doing it's a contribution of his time and efforts, and we would like everyone who is listening now in live or in replay to follow him on Twitter and then retweet everything he tweets, especially these clips he takes the time, as Tim says, to put together. Orthodox Zoomer super chatting again, $5 more. Thank you so much, dear friend. And this time, reading a recommendation for you all: Nihilism, the Root of the Revolution of the Modern Age by Father Rose. Brilliant and short read. Well, thank you very much. I haven't heard of it before. And we have a couple more questions over here. The other platforms for super chatting are blank, and I think we are covered then. Over here on the question widget on Entropy, we have a couple of questions. Let's see. Bugle Boy asking, how easily do white identitarians, I don't think, first of all, I'll just say, as you ask this question, I don't know that any of us here identify as something called an identitarian. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I'm an advocate for white well-being, but Bugle Boy is asking, how easily do white identitarians in North America identify with Europe and Europeans? Richard Spencer, he writes here parenthetically, does not seem to understand Europe. I'll just say that we see Western kind as a single people that has many countries. That's me. I know that of Jared, George as well. And Tim, what is your view on that?
I'm only going to divide the social space once. I don't divide the social. We're at war. I mean, war has been declared on us. Obviously, there's a war. I feel that there's a war for Western civilization, for the definition of Western civilization. I define it as 90+% white. Once it goes below 80%, and white being from Europe in the last few hundred years. But I don't divide the social space. You get all into all these particular differences where they're dividing social space. When I first came into this, there was all these divisions, even among the white advocacy groups. Yeah. I don't divide the social space. I'm only going to divide it once: pro-white and anti-white. And there's lots of wonderful pro-whites in Europe, and there's lots of bad anti-whites. But I'm not going to divide between, let's say, southern and northern Europe. Are there differences? Of course, there's difference in culture. There's difference in language. There's difference in texture and hue. We're only going to divide the social space once. Now, once this is over with. Once this is over with, I'm sure there'll be enough space. I don't know anyone out there that says, I want to conquer the Poles or I want to conquer the Russians. That's stuff that only happens like in neocon circles. We're not globalists here.
Precisely. And
so this kind of stuff is like, is Ireland Northern Europe? They're white. Come on, knock it off. Yeah, I'm only going to divide the social space. Anyone that divides the social space more than once is actually doing themselves a disservice in front of the enemy, because the enemy, and it's biblical in their terms, will only divide the social space once on you, period. And that's why you're always going to get attacked no matter what. You're white. And if you don't bend over and grovel, and even if you do bend over and grovel, they're still going to attack you.
Right.
So there's not really any incentive to bend over and grovel anymore. There's no reason why you shouldn't join the white positive sphere. Yeah, no reason to. But all these artificial divisions in the social space and this group and that group, it doesn't mean, it's kind of like, you're going to war against the Chinese. You got the Marines, you got the Navy, you got the Army, you got the Airborne, 82nd Airborne, all this stuff. You're going to divide the social space and all these different divisions? No, that's silly. I almost cursed. It's silly F's. It's silly stuff. You don't do that. That has no basis in the reality of war. It's not how wars are fought. And this is a war in the social space between our side, the pro-whites, we're the good side, and the bad side, the anti-whites. It's that simple. So as far as identitarian this or, that's the thing on our side, always what to call yourself. And that I'm simple. I'm pro-white. I'm opposed to all the anti-white stuff. It means I'm white and normal and tired of it. Simple. Mm.
Yeah, and the person who asked maybe is new, and we certainly welcome new people here.
Yeah, identitarian is very much a European term. Europeans they're not, this is the thing. And when Africans probably didn't realize they were black until they left Africa, that the Chinese and the Japanese didn't realize they were Asians and they were yellow and different, probably until they went on a voyage one morning. We whites in America realized we were white very quickly when we got to the continent. When we got to the continent, our ancestors, some of our ancestors directly just conquered outright. It's just the way it works. you are what you get attacked for. I was interested in, in the Nick Fuentes, the Groyper set. There's arguments over this because E. Michael Jones doesn't believe he's white. He believes he's like Catholic and that's his nationality and everything else. And Nick Fuentes even said, look, I've never been attacked for being Catholic, but I have been attacked for being white all the time. And that's kind of the way it goes. You are for what you get attacked at. In Europe, we'll repeat the American process very quickly as non-Europeans, non-whites come in. You're not going to be English anymore. You're just going to be white, and they're going to attack you for that. You're not going to be Scottish, and this is a tragedy. It's the destruction of culture. It's the destruction of people. But you're just this is a process, and there's not really a whole lot you're going to do about that. And that's kind of what you are. You can't change it. Deal with it, type of thing. But I keep the social space country simple because in war that's kind of how it goes. Yeah, there are differences between the Marines and the 82nd Airborne, but come on now. Hopefully we all know who the enemy is.
Precisely. And for the person who asked, as I was just mentioning quickly, if you're new here or anyone else, this show, Jason and I are both American, as you may have figured out, but we are very connected to people all around the world. We have guests from all around the world, and particularly in terms of customs and folklore, there's some shows that particularly focus on this. We are indeed very well connected here to the old continent. I would...
Yeah, same with me. My co-writer on Anti-Racist Hitler is European. My co-writer on many animations are European. I have European partners for many things. Many that they don't really have free speech, so we won't go into details. If you don't have free speech and you don't have free association, you owe me no explanation of your activities. Brothers and sisters, just get out there and do something. You don't have to be all complicated. Operate like they did in the Soviet Union, anonymous, whatever it takes to get your mission done legally, do it. But I'm very much connected to Europe, but at the same time, we are culturally different. We're unique, and we have free speech laws here. We used to. They're going quickly, but we used to have total free speech, and it was that's the way it was. No, I was not in the military, Mr. Runner. I see that question come through. I was not in the military. I'm trying to use analogies. I usually speak in analogies because that's how humans learn. And I try to use things that'll help get a bigger point across so you can understand why things are done the way they're done. And a lot of it's common sense. Sometimes we tend to overthink things when we get into this type of thing.
That's absolutely true. We have here Dale Jones super chatting $2, not writing anything, but saying a lot to the anti-whites. Thank you so much. Machiavelli sucks, $1.99, writing ban the Federal Reserve.
No argument. I'm not going to start arguing with that, but there's a whole entire structure that I'm concerned with the long-term preservation and stability of Western civilization, and as Jason says, Western kind. And there's a lot of different issues that we could confront, but we got to start talking about our survival. And we've survived with certain crazy adaptations of the gold standard. We've survived with fiat money. We've survived with the banksters. Not necessarily wonderful times, but we've had our ups and downs. But we're talking about our survival, period. There's a lot of different monetary systems we could go into and do just fine in an all-white society. We're talking about getting back to the basics.
Precisely, taking our destiny back. We also have Farmmaster Flex super chatting $5. Thank you, my dear friend. Writing, thanks for the great content while playing Wage. Life has become better since taking up advocacy for our own, though the haters still gonna hate, he writes. Thank you so much for that. And JT Smith, not super chatting, but worth repeating what he has written here. And that is, Tim is rocking it. I agree completely, JT. It's been a magnificent show with Tim, and we're going to find out now from him where he can be found. And remember, folks, that when you look for his links, you will look down into the description of this video, and you will see that there is an instruction to go to a particular website. And on that website is where you will find his links if they have not already been placed in the live chat. We don't place the links in the descriptions anymore because we get strikes for them. So we're going to find out from Tim that we're going to have him tell us where folks can find him and the kinds of things that he is going to be working on next. Please, sir.
You can always find me at whiterabbitradio.net. We live stream on YouTube now, and we're expanding to DLive as well. At White Rabbit Radio TV, you can look us up on the YouTube, or you can just go. We're also on BitChute. Many of our animations, Anti-Racist Hitler was banned in, like, I want to say 88 countries, and then YouTube took it down. But it's up. People have that up all over the planet. But typically that only plays for us through BitChute these days. But typically every week I do a free podcast that is now live streamed for your viewing pleasure or your listening pleasure after the fact, or however you want to go about your stuff. 80% of my listeners are podcasts these days. I'm guessing that will change over time as more new people come on the video that like video. But that's at 5 to 7 Eastern time on Saturday evenings. Rain or shine, whether it's me or just me or a guest or so on and so forth,
Splendid. Well, thank you so much, brother. It's been an absolute honor to have you here. We just had Miss Jess Horst pop in again with a super chat. Thank you, my dear woman, wonderful woman. $19.99. Right?
Wow, what a super chat.
Indeed. Pro-white versus anti-white. I'm pro-white. All of Europe is in my blood. Well, thank you so much for saying that. And she may actually be saying that from fact, as I can from DNA testing. But thanks so much for that super chat again, dear lady. And $19.99. And we had, what was the other? It was another we did have a question about, and this is I'm only going to mention it because it's a great opportunity to talk about language, which is what we're focusing on today. A question by a person of European descent has been posted on the widget on Entropy and in the live chat, asking about the roaring 20s being referred to as warring 20s. And that is something you don't want to do, because then you fit the anti-white stereotype of the antagonist using a word like war or violence or anything of that nature, whether you believe it's more aptly accurate or apropos for your definition, which I'm sure has nothing to do with violence, because we reject violence and we reject that anything good will come from violence. There is no field on which we can compete with these superstructures of county, state, federal governments, and unity of federal governments at the behest of some anti-white elites behind those. There is no violent competition that could be engaged in without total obliteration. So only bad will come.
Yeah, that model's been in a closed system. You're in a closed system where the people in charge own the truth. Diversity for you, diversity for thee, but not for me, that type of thing. Diversity always chasing down the last whites. But in this type of system where they own the truth and they're enforcing the truth, and if you go against that, they're going to hammer you. If you try to get violent in this type of system, it doesn't matter whether it's Tiananmen Square, it doesn't matter whether it's Soviet Union, it doesn't matter whether it's the perverse system that governs Western civilization right now. There has never been in the history of the world a closed system overthrown through violence without a larger state actor getting violent. In other words, you want to overthrow Saddam Hussein and his little closed regime, you're going to have to decapitate. So unless, when you start talking about these crazies on the internet talking about overthrowing something, you're not going to do that unless you have a bigger power come, and anything can happen, but there is no successful model. The model that were successful in the Soviet Union is the type of stuff, memes, seeding, doing the little things that soften things up over time, and then of course eventually things happen and the Berlin Wall comes down and things start opening up. And you could have a barn burner ending. You could have anything can happen, but there's never been a closed system taken down through violence. It doesn't work that way. You're going to have a larger state actor, unless you have a larger state actor. I mean, if Russia wants to start firing their space assets, I don't know. I'm just getting theoretical. But if you're talking about some guy thinking that, or some gal thinking that they're going to grab a bunch of guns and overthrow the federal government or the local, it ain't going to happen, guys. It don't happen that way. Revolutions are planned by highly skilled revolutionaries. And usually you've got big state actors that are going to, in a system like this, we know. The neocons, by the way, this is a wonderful case study for this group. The neocons have tried every way in the world. A very powerful group, one of the most powerful of their kind in the history of Western civilization, have tried everything in the world in our lifetimes to overthrow Iran and the Ayatollahs. They've tried everything. The Iran is a closed system. They own the truth. You want to overthrow them, you have to decapitate. And Iran knows that. They know the golden rule. They've tried everything. They've tried green revolutions. They tried smoke and mirrors with social media. No, that doesn't work, because no sooner than you start it, they shut it down.
Yep.
With the social media, I mean, we at least have some amount of access. We're still talking on YouTube. For guys like us to be talking to people like you on YouTube in 2020 is not good for the enemy at all, because you're going to start spreading the same stuff. You're going to start talking to your neighbors. There's a whole chain reaction that has happened in this stuff, and you guys are all part of that. And it can go so much further. Just get active. And it starts with what you do every day, the words you use. It's not the big things, it's the little things. And it's over and over and over again.
Precisely. Absolutely. Singing our song. Jared George, we have another super chat here as we're wrapping up, and we'll find out your final thoughts and where folks can find you, what you'll be up to next. And this super chat is from My Heart is a Fed Post. But super chatting $2 and writing, just keep doing what you guys are doing. Great work. Well, we thank you so much for that compliment and that investment in White Wellbeing. Jared George, take it away.
Well, I think it's safe to say Tim killed it and gave us an amazing open to the year and the decade. Tim, fascinating stuff. I am fascinated by language, but yeah, I have certainly not made a formal study of it the way that you have and have the tools that you do. So it was fascinating for me. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate your perspective and your facility with the information and how well you present it. It's been great. For anyone who didn't catch it at the beginning, Jason and I have both been on Tim's show as well. So please do look for that on the afterparty.tv. We should be back probably Tuesday night with an after hours. We try to do those weekly check-ins with you. And we'll be doing more kinds of content now that we have the website set up. I remind everyone you can watch this show via Entropy right on our website on the Watch Live Now page. And please try to get in the habit of doing that. That's really where we're going to be encouraging you to go more and more as we put one foot in front of the other and keep doing this thing. Also, please sign up for the newsletter on the Keep in Touch tab page as well. I actually just did something I haven't done in a while, which was I took a little 5-minute clip of something I was saying on After Hours a few nights ago on the 30th before the year turned. And I put that on some of my platforms, and now it's on the websites as well on the afterparty.tv and also my own site, thegreatorder.com. So that's something we do too. And I would say, we mentioned HB 2014 before, and we love him and we love what he does. Anyone out there, if you're wondering how to participate, that is one of the greatest things you can do. Right now, a lot of our focus, of course, Jason and I do a number of things, but a fair amount of focus is on these shows. And especially for new people, they see a 2-hour stream, 90-minute stream. They might not click on it right away if they don't know what it's about. If you can make 5-minute clips to give people an idea of what we do here, the dynamics of the conversations that we have, maybe even show notes about different topics that were discussed and the timestamps, we could definitely copy and paste that on our website on that show's post, and we'd be happy to give you credit if you want credit. So those are some ways you can contribute as well. But
yeah, I mean, there's one of the interesting things that we've seen of late, which I was rather, in the Groyper phenomenon, there are several YouTube channels now copy and pasting various different things, cutting, and they're actually monetized, making money, which I'm like, wow, that's awesome. At least for the moment. So you guys, if you want a future in video editing, I can tell you right now that there are guys out there on our side that not only do they need the help, some of us actually pay for the help. So, you need to keep that in mind. You're building a skill set, and that's wide open. You're not going to get skill set in media. You're not going to start a media company or go to Hollywood or do anything if you're if you're under our persuasion. However, you can be a mom and pop shop, and you can go ham and go wild on it and maybe even build an empire for yourself.
Yep. I did a Who We Are video, with which a lot of people collaborated with me on, narrated. Jason was one of the narrators, and a guy, Micah Official, is his YouTube channel, but he'd reached out. He helped me with the skits, the Philosophic Cat skits as well, but did this amazing job on the Who We Are video. Definitely go check that out if you haven't already. If you want to talk about what unites us as people of European descent, something that'll give you inspiration, give you that engine to go forward. It is quite a presentation. So it's something I was very proud to be part of. Anyway, afterparty.tv, That's the hub of our media outlets, our media projects. And then, yeah, for me, thegreatorder.com has that, plus all the other things I do. So we will see you all soon. Happy 2020. Here's to a new decade. Thank you all for being here with us.
Thank you for having me on. You guys are fantastic. Keep up the good work.
Tim, for being our
Appreciate everything.
Guest of the new decade. And I'll hand it over to Jason to take us out. We'll see you all soon.
Yes, indeed. How was that for a new first show of a new decade, ladies and gentlemen? That is magnificent. Here we are with Tim and, of course, the great Jared George, both magnificent servants of White Wellbeing, doing as so much that a person could possibly do. And so many of you all participating in so many different ways. And we have here a person of European descent clarifying that he would never encourage violence. It was a question based on some predictions by some geopolitical types. And so we thank you for that you were wondering about whether or not it would be a warring 20s. Well, we sure as hell hope that it will not. Thank you for the clarification. Let me say a big thank you for this getting started in 2020, our first TAP, as exciting as that could be for this entire decade. Big thank you to Seaver Hamlin, all the great work he is doing, and Spartan Warrior Queen, keeping it clean here in Productive in our live chats, and of course making it difficult for them being on so many different platforms. So
just be on 100 platforms. Good luck taking us down. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. And let me give a couple of salutes to some folks I saw in the live chat today. We saw Mary Teresa was with us. Coconut was here. Great friend, her and her husband. Great seeing you. Freya was here. Bernard was here. Kimberly. Frankenberry was here. Durden was here. Quiet Storm, I salute to you as well. Aunt Sally was here. Susie was here. It was great seeing you all. As always, a magnificent time, a wonderful way to start 2020 with a fantastic gentleman like this, Tim. And a big thank you to Jared George and all the hard work that he does. And we will be looking forward to seeing you all again next time right here on TAP. Bye-bye now.